And because I don't want to run out of time and there's questions and answers. So I want you to see what I've been talking about. And then I'll love to, okay, next. Okay, so real quick, I want you to know that 1391 is when this all started. And only the expulsion came in 1492. The Inquisition only began because the people that converted, my family, I finally took them back to 1405, and I have 22 grandmothers in a row that I have identified. So they became Catholics in name only, and then that's why they made the Inquisition, because everyone was practicing Judaism underground. Next. So with the timeline, the Inquisition really was only over in 1834 in most places. In the New World, in Peru and Spain, and in Spain, we were not really allowed to go back there as a decree from the rabbis until 500 years had passed. So there were pretty much only Jews returning in 1992. Next. Okay, so here is the Hamsa that my grandmother gave me, and the Star of David. I have two earrings on this particular earrings, all very old. I've never had them. I don't take them out of the safe. I've never had them valued or seen how nobody has stuff like this. So I just figured, I have a lot of better things to do. They meant a lot to my grandmother. She passed them to me on the day she died, and here they are. I don't know anything else about them. Next. So this was the underground synagogue, the stairs of the oral tradition that had the ark outside. And so down from here is later, I'm sorry, this is the second one. You can see here to the bottom, to the right a little bit over here, you can see the beginning of what later was identified by historians as the Aron Kodesh, and the kitchen is on top. So this, that's okay, go ahead. So this carving is one of the things that we found in my village. There's carvings all over Spain and Portugal, and you can see that this one is like the cross on top of the 12 tribes, and it's crossed over by a sword, and on the top is the name of God with the letters Yud He Vav He. This is right across the cemetery in the village of my ancestors. Next. So under 2.1 miles under this village, it's all carved out, meaning all of this is granite, and they made tunnels, and there's signs that say these tunnels were made in darker times. So this is one of the underground. You can literally go underground from 2 miles out all the way to the river. And there was a couple of incidences that were recorded that there were 30,000 Jews that crossed over at one point from Spain to Portugal. It wasn't here, but it was said that it was in a town nearby or a region. So it could have been that they were hiding here. Otherwise, there's no sense to this. Next. Okay, so this was most interesting, the Fermoselle hand-drawn coat of arms. If you see it to the left, it says Fermoselle in like English letters, and obviously very rustic. And on the right, when you turn it around, this also, like I turned it around one day just looking for clues. So if you turn it around, it says Fermoselle. I'm sorry, it says Lisgor in Hebrew, and Lisgor means closed. So this history was closed and tight, and I came along and found this one, thank God. Next. Okay, so this is when my mother got Alzheimer's and she was put in a home. I went into her house, and she had hundreds of recipes, many of them all the way from the Inquisition, made by grandmother after grandmother after grandmother. And then I published in Israel the book, The Recipes of My 15 Grandmothers, based on all of these hundreds of recipes that mom had that had been passed down, many of them like Haman's ears for Purim, the Maimonides cake. and one called pork chops that was made of like a breading. So they would eat it to historically so people would think that they were eating pork chops and wouldn't catch them. Next. And oh, here they are. Here's the pork chops. So this is the last aunt, 1810, that wrote this recipe down. So the crypto Jews would sit down, they'd get a real pork chop, they would burn it in the fire so the house smelled like pork, but their servants and their neighbors wouldn't turn them in. And it is literally called chuleta, which means pork chop. Next. This is my tree before 1600. Everybody that is in olive green were burned at the stake. And so this is before 1600. And then after 1600, it's too long to put here. Next. And these are my books, my 50, oh, they're all in English and Spanish. And you can see my grandmom on the recipes of this 15 grandmothers smiling up. So they've all won awards. And again, now my movie is now covering most of this history. Next. And I think that's it. Great. All righty.
Well, thank you so much, Jeannie. This was so interesting, and I'm sure there's lots of food for thought and lots of questions, and just to see the images after having heard you speak, it really does bring home some of the things you talked about and really paints a picture. So I would really like to turn over to the audience. Please send your questions to me, and I'm happy to bring them to Jeannie's attention and we can discuss. So please put them in the chat. So far we have a comment, excellent, amazing story, and you are amazing.
Thank you.
Maybe I will, while they're coming in, I'll just, I know you said there's a lot of things that you're doing currently and you're on your way back to Italy next week. What is in the immediate timeline in terms of your investigation and what you're uncovering? What are you looking to uncover and to bring out?
Well, so the Inquisition records are housed in, they all have genealogies, by the way. This is why we're able to go back to them. Like on page 9, they're all written on vellum, a couple hundred pages front and back. The genealogy starts. So all the genealogies are there. This is why we need them to be able to go back. So every country, whether it's in Mexico or in Canary Islands or Cartagena or in Lima, Peru, they all have their own repositories. But when someone would give an appeal to the Inquisition, if I were taken in and my family appealed it, the appeal, along with the original Inquisition document, would go to the Vatican for final discussion. So I'm looking for the Vatican to release some of these to me, and so far they're having trouble finding them, and I believe them. I think they're being very honest. I don't think that I'm being told in any way, shape, or form that they're, so when I'm going back next week, they're going to take me into actually this particular room that you see here, and then we're going to more or less look for it together, kind of thing, because I don't think they quite understand what I'm looking for.
Wow, that's really interesting. So the next question, please, is from a viewer. What were some of the traditions that families who were unknowingly Jewish were done by crypto Jews, such as kissing doorposts or Shabbat meals with fingers? I know you mentioned the chuletas. What are some of the other ones?
So one of the most important one, and this is just about in everybody's family, is sweeping to the center of the room. That one kind of stuck through the hundreds of years. So back in the day, there was all these mezuzahs on the doorposts, and then when the time passed and they took the mezuzahs off of the door. Remember, we're talking about dirt homes, right? Uh, you saw what's going on as far as when this village was built. So they wouldn't sweep the dirt out through the door to continue to honor the location of where the mezuzah used to be. So you would sweep to the center of the room. There is not one person, my family included, that doesn't sweep to the center of the room. Now, what really, and I didn't mention it before, launched me on this investigation, that's when my grandmother died. It was Friday, and I knew I couldn't go. And I said to my mom, bury her Monday. For crying out loud, you're Cuban, you're Catholic. Why are you burying her on, she said, because in this family, we must bury within 18 hours. And I'm like, bingo. So that is another tradition. Some families that I've spoken to, they burn candles in a closet on Friday nights. Another tradition that happened in my family, and there were so many that I wasn't catching the clues, is that when I married my ex-husband in the cathedral and we were kneeling at the altar, all of a sudden my grandmother and my mother and my grandmother run up to the altar and wrap us in a shawl, like a tallis, but it was a shawl around our shoulders, and the rest of this church wedding happened with a shawl around our shoulders. So there's just so many of these tiny little things. You just have to put them all, kind of put them all together.
Mhm. Thank you. So it's incredible, all these pieces. A question just to ask, is the name of your movie, My 15 Grandmothers? Um,
No, the name of the movie is Between the Stone and the Flower. So what happened there is, after a while, I also found that my dad has a hefty Jewish ancestry. If you've ever been to Córdoba, Spain, there is the house, is called La Casa de la Judería, which means the house of the Jewish quarter. And that home at the entrance of the Jewish quarter belonged to my dad's 17th grandfather. And so my dad's Jewish lineage is probably even heftier and stronger than mom's. And so it came at me from both sides. And on that, when I buried dad in 2017, I started putting stones on his grave. And then at one time for his birthday, it didn't feel right because even though I knew he had this Jewish ancestry, I felt he didn't live a life as a Jew. So I started bringing flowers. And then when mom died a couple of years ago, I knew she had this Jewish ancestry, but she also had never practiced. And so I began putting the stones and the flowers. And then as I did that symbolically, I said, before I even thought of the movie, I said, you know what? I'm living my life between the stone and the flower. And the name of the movie is Between the Stone and the Flower. So I will tell you that in 2014, after all the hassle that I had received from mom, she told me she wanted to visit my rabbi, and I'm like, oh no, like, let's let this go. We're talking 2014, and Michael took her, and she told the rabbi that she did not want to die Jewish, Catholic, and she wanted to return to the Jewish people. She was 86 years old. And because of this decree that I had gotten in Israel, the rabbi said, look, you are Jewish, but because of this decree, you have to take it on. You can't just, it's your right, but you have to take it on. So do one mitzvah. It's Friday afternoon, light the candles with your daughter. I went to my mom's house. I felt I was in some sort of twilight zone. I said the blessing. She said, tell me the blessing in English. Don't tell me in Hebrew. And she made her whole thing and she lit candles. And that Sunday, my dad called me and told me that mom had sunk into like the flood of dementia, Alzheimer's, from that last act that she did until she died 7 years later at 93, I believe it was. Um, she never came back. It was the last thing she did. I was never able to ask my mom why she did this. I was never able to understand the motivation and why did she hide it all these years? Then my grandmother was gone. I mean, I had already done all this work. My mom returned, and my maternal lineage, my daughter, my granddaughter. I have a 3-year-old granddaughter. Um, the lineage continues. Now, my question that I will answer that nobody's asked is, what about my kids? What about my kids today? So my kids today are not, they understand their heritage. They understand. I actually heard my son saying to someone the other day, are you a practicing Jew? He said, I am a Jew. I don't practice. So that was kind of interesting. And neither of them are religious in either religion.
That actually, there was a couple questions you answered, and a couple of people asking about that. So thank you. There's been a lot of praise and just really exciting talk and fantastic information, enlightening. And then a couple more questions too regarding why you think perhaps your grandmother didn't share this information with your mother, and regarding the room that you're in right now as you're speaking.
So I did it. So a few years ago at the Weizmann Institute in Israel, and with the Israeli Genealogical Institute. They wanted me to do a sort of study of people that have returned and feel they have these roots, along with a control study of people that are Hispanic but have never mentioned they have these roots, and trying to look for the epigenetic. Epigenetics is history that is passed down, memories passed down through DNA. And it is still a budding science. I know there's a lot of this going on at Harvard. I've had several people contact me. So there was about 30 questions, and we were trying, it didn't finish, but I had over 400 people answer me all of this. And the fear level was still so, I didn't understand about my grandmother until I concluded doing the statistics on this whole investigation, that the fear in the participants that had this background, it was palpable. And so I feel that I am not into that. I'm not a scientist in that way. I feel that there must be something to this memory that is in the genes, that is in the DNA. And this is why my grandmother was so fearful. Now, everything that is written on this topic, you're usually is not picked up by your daughter. It's picked up by a granddaughter. And I think this is why she didn't tell my mom. My mom knew, or she wouldn't have returned. My mom knew she had these Inquisition recipes, but the actual passing over was from grandmother to granddaughter. And I honestly feel that's probably going to be my case as well.
And there's two remaining.
So I'm sorry, they asked about this. So this is actually one shot that somebody took when they were in the Inquisition, in the Vatican Secret Archives. And this is the one shot. I did not take this picture. I took this picture off the internet because I'm super excited that I'm going to be there in a couple of weeks. And if it doesn't look like this, I will be supremely disappointed.
Thank you. I'm going to sneak in two final questions, please. From the audience also. Do you know the status of the archives of Evora now? And if your family, in addition to Portugal, escaped in other parts of the Americas, Asia, in the 15th and 16th century, if they ended up in other places as well?
I didn't understand the second question.
If, in addition to Portugal, if your ancestors escaped to other parts of the Americas or of Asia.
Okay. Yes. So Évora was picked up when we finished Portugal, and it should already be up. Évora, Porto. If the Inquisition records, the company that agreed to pay for this agreed to scan and digitize. But the records were not in any kind of condition. There were holes. They were really musty and messy in most parts, and especially in Évora, because those records are from the 1500s. So we obtained funding from the Israeli consulate in Lisbon, a couple of million, I believe. And so they restored and we digitized. Évora went with that. So Évora should be up online by now. All of Portugal, including the files, some of them that were missing from Goa, India. My family went from Portugal. They they were from there. They were caught in one of the Cadiz, Spain, in the Inquisition. They were caught in Portugal in the tribunals of Porto, Lisbon, Coimbra, and Évora. They fled to the Canary Islands. They were caught in the tribunals of the Canary Islands. They fled to Cartagena, Colombia, and I have 2 Inquisition records from Cartagena, Colombia. From there, they went to Cuba and to Costa Rica, and that was the end of that. That was already like mid-1800s. So when I told you I had 45 relatives burned at the stake, that was the original ones from before 1600, but there was a lot more that came after.
Well, thank you so much, Jeannie. I know there's a lot of food for thought and a lot of exciting questions, and people are really excited to continue reading and watching and visiting your website. And I know when we talked, there's a lot of really good things on Jeannie's website, so please do check it out. And
Yeah, and I always I feel that I have to apologize because it's so hard, and it does take a lot out of me. So I apologize that I get this emotional about this topic. So thank you so much for being here.
well, thank you so much for having us, for giving this talk to us. And a viewer just wrote in, "Dear Jeannie, took many, many generations of your family until you came along, but what a worthwhile wait. Your numerous past grandfathers and grandmothers and family members can rest in peace and set things right for numerous other families. Marvelous. Thank you."
I know that my 22 grandmothers, when I light candles I light 10 candles on Friday nights. They've just been adding themselves through the years. And when I light, I close my eyes and I just envision all of these 22 tiny little women dressed in black surrounding me and just being so happy that their voices are heard after so many centuries.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us tonight. And please stay tuned for forthcoming programming. And the last comment, no need to apologize for getting emotional.
Thank you.